Did nobody learn from the Idaho 4 case? Let's get into it and you'll see what I'm talking about. So last weekend there was a fight on Greek Row at University of Idaho, and it entailed a DoorDash driver and a Phi Delta Theta fraternity member. Now, a lot of misinformation was floating about that fight. And the Moscow Police Department had to put out a press release to try to clear up the misinformation. Definitely deja vu all over again. So the press release states, Moscow police investigating physical altercation on the University of Idaho campus. September 26, 2025. On September 24th, 2025, at approximately 8:53 p.m., the Moscow Police Department was dispatched to a report of a battery near the intersection of Idaho Avenue and Deacon Avenue on the University of Idaho campus. Officers arrived on the scene and found one adult male had sustained significant injuries. The investigation into this incident is still ongoing. No arrests have been made and no charges have been filed to this point. The Moscow Police Department has been made aware of the rumors and misinformation being shared in the public in regards to this incident that we would like to address with the facts we have gathered thus far in the investigation. First, there is information circulating that the individual found with significant injuries was attacked by multiple assailants. This is false. MPD has recovered evidence that clearly shows this was an altercation between two adult males. Second, there is information being circulated that the injured male was curb stomped during the incident. The term curb stomp commonly refers to the act of striking someone's head against the curb of a street with one's foot. The evidence recovered shows this did not occur in this case and is also false. So what happened was a DoorDash driver pulled up to deliver food and his car was hit by a basketball because some guys were out, playing a pickup game of basketball. And the DoorDash driver, apparently from what people are saying, felt like it was on purpose. So he went after one of the fraternity guys and he fielded the first punch. So the fight was started by the DoorDash driver, and the fraternity member and him got into it. And it was not a group of people. There's video out. It was one-on-one. There was no curb stomp. You can see in the video that when the one goes to the ground, the other guy, they both go to the ground. So nobody's stomping on his head. It's hard to tell from the video whether the fraternity guy knew that there was a head injury to the one that ended up in the hospital, because the DoorDash driver is currently in the hospital in an induced coma. But there was a lot of misinformation going around. So Moscow police is addressing it in that statement. So let's continue on with the rest of the statement. MPD is also aware of individuals in the public sending what is perceived as threatening messages to the non-injured involved party and that person's fraternity members and acquaintances, and inserting themselves into this incident by trying to conduct their own investigation and attempting to contact and harass witnesses. The Moscow Police Department cautions anyone who engaged in this type of harassing and obstructing behavior that their actions could potentially constitute a criminal offense and they could face criminal charges. Our agency will continue to conduct its official investigation, and we ask that members of the public refrain from attempting to become involved with this active investigation. Lastly, the Moscow Police Department wishes to remind the public that MPD is the only source of vetted, accurate information regarding this investigation or any other investigation that is handled by our department. Further information regarding this incident will be shared publicly when appropriate and permitted by law. And that was put out by Police Chief Anthony Dollinger. Now, what is sad is that they're having to put something like that out to the public again, just like in the Idaho 4 case, because people were inserting themselves into the case. People were sending death threats. They were harassing people involving the Idaho 4 case. They were doxing them, showing their homes. Now, the fraternity member that was involved in the fight has been kicked out of the fraternity. Now people are saying if he was kicked out, how come charges haven't been brought? And those don't necessarily go hand in hand, because fraternities and sororities have their own, rules, their own honor codes. So getting kicked out for fighting doesn't necessarily mean that you've committed an offense that is chargeable in the legal system. Now, he could end up getting charged. That's why they're still investigating. Again, there's video of the incident. It shows that it was one-on-one. It was not a group going after him. And in fact, as soon as the fight ended, several people helped and rendered aid. And you can tell in the video there's no curb stomping. What's hard to tell in the video is whether the fraternity guy, the non-injured one, knew that the other person was that badly injured. There's no way to know. You can't really tell from that video whether the other guy was unconscious or he would have known he had a head injury. You can't tell because there's something kind of blocking both of their torsos. So you can't tell if the one on the bottom was still throwing a punch or not. So that's what law enforcement has to determine. Because if they were still both actively punching each other, it's going to be really hard to charge one of them because the other one ended up with severe injuries. Now, if they can prove that he still was hitting him after he was unconscious, then you could possibly see charges brought. One thing I'm noticing is a lot of people online are yelling and screaming about call the police department, demand charges. Well, the police department's not who charges someone. The prosecutor does. So calling the police department's not going to do anything in that respect, but also prosecutors aren't going to be swayed by the public calling and saying, oh, I think you should charge somebody. Okay. They're going to go by what the evidence ends up showing and whether they think it's a case that charges need to be brought for. The other thing is this young man was kicked out of fraternity. Phi Delta Theta has nothing to do with it at this point. But yet I'm seeing people on social media saying to call the fraternity and to harass them and to demand that they take action. Well, they took action. They kicked the member out. So you calling them and harassing them doesn't do anything, doesn't help with anything, because they are no longer, they're not part of this. None of them were involved in that fight other than the one member that's no longer in the house anymore. So the fraternity is not at fault here. They are not to blame. They are not, you should not be calling and harassing them. And I can't believe, like I said, that Moscow police had to put out another release like this. Stop inserting yourself into investigations. Stop harassing people. Stop trying to contact witnesses. Did you not learn anything from the Idaho 4 case? Nothing? And the insanity is still going on in that case also. And also, everything that happens in Moscow is not related to the Idaho 4 case. I'm already seeing people with tinfoil hats trying to say that this DoorDash driver was hurt purposely because he was really the DoorDash driver the night of the Idaho 4 and that Molly was just a cover. What? Like, were you dropped on your head as children? Like, listen to yourselves. Everything in Moscow is not related. And the only reason why you're even hearing about this fight is because you're hyper-focused on Moscow because of the Idaho 4 case. If you were to pay attention to your own communities for a couple weeks and started parsing every single news piece that came out of your towns, you would see that fights happen everywhere. This is not anything that's an anomaly, okay? Yes, the Idaho 4 murders were an anomaly because murders like that, yes, they happen all across the country, but they don't happen like every day. But fights happen every day, okay? And I'm not excusing the behavior, not excusing the fights, but saying Moscow's evil, Moscow's bad because there was this fight, and also because you're trying to tie it to the Idaho 4 because you're so hyper-focused on everything Moscow is just nuts. Also, as they reiterated again, leave the crime solving to law enforcement. I tell people this: if you want to see a documentary on how to web sleuth, like the correct way to be a cyber sleuth, watch Don't Fuck with Cats. That shows you how to be ethical, how to do it the right way, not the way several of you have done with the Idaho 4 case. And as a matter of fact, the Idaho 4 case is closed. So why are people still in lives every night claiming that they're going to solve it? Like, daily I hear, what if we're the ones to solve it? Oh my gosh, I can't believe that we could be the ones to solve it, and law enforcement didn't notice any of this. Newsflash, the case is already solved, and you're not the ones that solved it. And also, this fight didn't need any web sleuths because we already know who the two participants are, and there's video of the fight, and law enforcement already has all that. So what's the point of spreading misinformation about the fight and then harassing and doxing and everything else? And I know people are sick of me saying this, but do better. Please, do better.